Raches, you mentioned that yours was an inactivated vaccine, right? So in simple terms, could you explain what exactly vaccines are and what is the actual process behind making them and bringing them out into the market? And this is pertaining to Covaxin as such, because you have come up with an inactivated vaccine and the data shows good results. So from the beginning till the production of one vial, how long does it take and what are the phases that you have to go through? This question is because I think most of us who are not in the vaccine field often tend to ask, we have doubts regarding why it takes such a long time to produce the vaccine. So could you just explain that to everyone, please?
Sure, definitely. So I'll start with the first part of your question on vaccine 101. So vaccine basically is a biological product that is either injected into you, or it could be intranasally administered or administered through your skin. And this product, once it enters your human body, it kind of stimulates, or it tells your immune system what to do. It gives it a message what to do. And your immune system reacts to this vaccine, which is injected into your body, and it starts generating an antibody response to that. So thereby, the antibody response that is developed towards that vaccine essentially should help you towards preventing you succumbing to the disease. That is essentially what a vaccine does. It's a highly regulated biological product. These are usually given to prevent, not cure. So once you get the disease, you can't take a vaccine. But in anticipation of you getting the disease, you can take a vaccine. Vaccines are highly regulated because of this reason, because it's a prophylactic, because you're giving it to healthy individuals. You're not giving it to individuals who are sick or who are terminally ill. It's not like a last resort option. So, and vaccines are primarily, as you are all are aware of, they're primarily given to children that are not able to fight off diseases at such a young age because their immune system has not been fully developed. So that's essentially what a vaccine does. It enters your body, it stimulates an immune response, and your body then will be able to fight any pathogen or any virus or bacteria that enters in the future. Coming to the development of the vaccine, so it all starts off with R&D. R&D is critical. There are no generics with vaccines. One has to start from the very scratch, and one has to build their intellectual property right from step one. You cannot take it from someone else and put it into your factory and replicate it. So that's why it's very time consuming. One has to do their own R&D, their own developmental process. And then when you identify a molecule or your vaccine candidate that you have confidence in, this entire process, this discovery process, takes anywhere between 2 to 5 years. And that's assuming if you're successful. And once you're successful, you need to do a laborious preclinical toxicology study where you inject mice, rabbits, small animals, where you see if the vaccine is creating that immune response, because small animals are fairly consistent to human beings as well. So you're able to gauge the safety of the vaccine once the vaccine is administered into these animals. Are their organs okay? Is it causing any abnormal reaction in their organs? Is it creating a good immune response, which is desirable for a vaccine? And once it passes that test, it moves to, I'm sure you've all heard of this, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, human clinical trials. And again, because you're giving unknown new substances into the human for the first time, you need to be extremely careful. So phase 1 is always done in approximately 50 or so human beings. And then if it proves to be successful, you primarily look at the safety of the vaccine. If that's successful, you move to a larger phase 2 in probably 300 people. And if that's successful, you move to a phase 3, where you move to possibly anywhere above 5,000 or 10,000. So this entire process of human clinical development takes anywhere between 7 to 10 years.
But it was restricted to less than 1 year for you guys, right?
Exactly. That's something I never learned in textbooks. So I'm really fortunate to be here in Hyderabad, working with Bharat Biotech, learning how to make a vaccine in 11 months, which was never heard of. Of course, kudos to my colleagues and employees, but also there was a tremendous amount of collaboration with our collaborators, the ICMR. They helped us a significant amount of the way. They helped us for doing all those pivotal animal studies. And also the Drug Controller General of India, they are like the Indian FDA. They were also quite speedy with their review process and their validation process, and they were giving us speedy approvals as and when we requested for.
So Raches, you mentioned that vaccines as such are supposed to be given to healthy people, right? So today, if I am infected with the COVID virus, am I eligible to take the vaccine after I'm completely cured?
So absolutely, I believe the current Ministry of Health guidelines state that if you are infected with COVID-19, after your symptoms resolve, you can wait for a certain amount of period to take your COVID-19 vaccine. I believe the current guidance by the Ministry of Health is 6 months. And the only reason for that is because there are studies looking at people who got COVID naturally, and they tracked their antibodies for over a time span. And they noticed that even after 6 months, there was detectable antibodies in the blood. So it's for those reasons alone, such guidance has been given. And with this approach, I think it's a quite wise approach. With this approach, you're able to, knowing that in this second wave, so many of our citizens have been infected, it will at least allow the citizens who have not been infected or who are naive to COVID get their opportunity to get vaccinated.
Right. So I will get to that question of antibodies because there are a lot of queries regarding that. But before that, about your phase 3 trials, the 3 phases of your trials. At the moment, you have completed phase 3 and you are writing up the paper. But how hard was the recruitment through the?
Yeah, so it's quite hard to do any clinical trial when you're dealing with human lives, especially with a novel product, and during India's biggest healthcare crisis. And also when you're doing India's largest 30,000 sample size clinical trial. And when you ask these participants, we call them participants or volunteers in our terminology. So these are people who participate in the trial. When they come to us and if they show interest, we have to do something called we have to take their consent. So we have to explain the entire risks and benefits of participating in this trial. And also in the phase 3 trial, half of them received the vaccine, half of them received a placebo, which is just a water injection into your arm. So that placebo gives you no benefit from COVID-19. And you have to tell the participant this. When you get into this trial, if you want to volunteer for this trial, you either get vaccine or you either get placebo. So you either may be protected or you either may not be protected. And we don't know who gets vaccine, who gets placebo. It's called blinding. So the doctors at the clinical trial sites, 25 hospitals we partnered with, did not know. The patients didn't know. And we, the sponsor, also did not know. So that's quite a challenge to explain to volunteers that you get a 50% chance of receiving this vaccine. That deters a lot of people from joining clinical trials. But what we also saw was people saying, hey, even if I have a 50% chance of getting something that might be even marginally effective, why not? It's some amount of protection. It's better than nothing. So that was the kind of mindset our trial volunteers had. They were extremely optimistic and positive about it. And we were able to completely enroll or recruit these 25,800 participants within a month and a half's time. So the turnout and the enthusiasm shown by the doctors helping us with the trial, the investigators, and also the trial volunteers is extraordinarily high.
That's fantastic. So now that I actually have you here, I had one question regarding your phase 3 trial. The journal is yet to be, the paper is yet to be published in the journal. What are the results?
Yeah, so usually with medical journals, if you disclose the results before giving it to them, they tend to hate you for life. So unfortunately, I can't share that information with you. It will be out in a peer-reviewed journal. If it's anything you need to know about Bharat Biotech, we've been extremely transparent with our vaccine development with Covaxin. We have 9 peer-reviewed publications on Covaxin. I encourage you all to read them. And you might think these are extremely scientific and medical oriented, but when you write a paper, it's supposed to be comprehensible to even a 10th class person who understands English. So I encourage you to read them. Our phase 3 paper will be our 10th peer-reviewed publication, and which hopefully will solidify claims that Covaxin is safe, efficacious, and that will come out soon, Pragnya. Just give us some time.
Waiting for
But
that.
however, our second interim analysis, so that's where when you're going through the trial, you're going through your phase 3 trial, you keep taking pauses and you keep looking at the data as to saying what are the preliminary results. So we got a hint of that at our second interim analysis, which states that the efficacy of the vaccine is 78% towards mild, moderate, or severe COVID-19.
Okay, great. That's amazing. So my next question is regarding the spacing of vaccines. Well, I read a 3-month follow-up in the phase 1 study about when we're supposed to be taking the booster shot, right? That's a second shot. And there was a lot of debate, and there's an existing confusion between different vaccines. It's not only Covaxin, but even Covishield and the others based on the spacing. In your phase 1 study, it says you tested for between 14 days, and in phase 2, it was 28 days. And the current guidelines say that, the most recent guidelines say that Covaxin, the space between the first and the second dose is 28 days. And for Covishield, they have recently pushed it to around 12 to 16 weeks. So scientifically speaking, what exactly determines this time period? And now that if because of the increased spacing, does the efficacy actually change?
Sure, absolutely. So the only thing that determines public health policy is evidence or data that you generate from clinical trials. So that's what we're doing. That's what Covishield is doing as well. With regards to Covaxin, yes, you're right. The window to take it is 28 days, the dosing interval. That can also be extended for above 2 weeks as well. So from the 4th week to the 6th week, you're eligible to take your second dose. However, in fact, if you're not able to get your second dose between that 4th week to 6th week interval, still continue to try to get your second dose at any given point of time. You need not repeat the whole thing again. So just get your first dose and just make sure you get your second dose regardless of the dosing interval. I don't think one should be bothered too much about that. It's very important to get your second dose. With regards to Covishield, I can, from what my understanding is of the literature that's out there on the AstraZeneca product, they have done clinical trials that suggest that their vaccine is equally efficacious if you widen that dose interval. So if you take the first dose and then if you wait for 3 months and take the second dose, nothing happens to your efficacy. They are saying, however, that your immune response is slightly better. So that is the rationale. From a programmatic standpoint and from this pandemic standpoint, the reason why the government of India, I can't speak on their behalf, but my understanding tells me that the reason why they made this decision is to ensure that there's a lot of first dose availability for other people who've not received the vaccine. So it opens it up to more people that are vaccinated. And there is a certain amount of protection conferred from both of these vaccines, even after one dose.
Right. So just to reiterate, Covaxin should be taken within 28 days or whenever you get the second dose, but there's no reason to panic. As in when you get the vaccine, you should be able to.